I mean, just like you like to insert into every conversation we have that you do martial arts. I
Oh,
will now.
now I remember you. Yeah.
So, Carl, obviously, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me today. It is very nice to see you, and especially to see you doing well. I know that the situation in Hellfest back in June, you got quite ill and you had to cancel the show, your performance rather in the show, so that now had to perform as a three-member outfit. First, is this the first time that you actually cancel an appearance? And second, how are you doing?
It's the first time that the guys have had to play without me since 1996. I had to miss a couple shows because I was in a custody uh, battle in court, over the custody of my infant son. So I had to be in court. You can't miss that. Then in 2005, we all got food poisoning in Arizona. Um, and I was really, really, really sick. So we just didn't play, which that was a costly endeavor. And you don't play, you still have to pay all the expenses. You just don't get paid. So it's not good. It's not good. That's what they say. The show must go on. Well, the show must go on. But this thing after Grass Pop and before Hellfest, it's the first time they've had to play without me. The expenses on that trip were so costly this time that we would have lost so much money if they didn't try to save the show. It was just insane. So, hats off to my bandmates. They did what they had to do under very difficult circumstances, and they did it. So I got some good bandmates.
In this case, this is just a personal curiosity, rather, about how the business of music works. Um, so you're touring, you're doing a tour in Europe. You have an appearance at a festival, and due to a force majeure situation, such as Karl is really really sick, he cannot perform. The festival then will just not pay you for the appearance, even though it is force majeure. That's why I'm.
Dude, try to get paid if you don't show up. Just try. Just try. It's not going to happen.
And there
If
isn't an
you don't
insurance that
play, you don't get paid. No, it'll level up for a death metal band. No, we don't have insurance. If you're Metallica or Alice in Chains or Guns N' Roses, yeah, those shows are insured because you're talking about millions of dollars.
Yeah, of course, for in a much smaller level, you don't get coverage.
Or health insurance, or you don't get a dental plan, you don't get sick days. No, if you want to get paid, you got to show up.
I know that this is kind of a completely different direction of where I was thinking we were going to take this, but what has that been a very big disappointment in your musical career, to just see the reality of being a professional musician as opposed to the theory of being a professional musician? Because when you're young, it's just like a cool thing, but when you're an adult, it's like this is
Right.
a job.
What you're talking about is so real that as my own son grew up and, he loved to play guitar, I did not encourage him to take it up professionally. No, no fucking way. I know what's actually on that road. Like when I was 18 or 19 or 20 and, playing in bands, and I had this idea of what it was going to be to, okay, yeah, let's play music for a living. The reality is much different than that, conception of how, oh, it's everything about it's great. No. Playing music is great. Hanging out with fans is great. The time you spend on stage with the fans, that's great. But a lot of the other things, that's not so great. And that's often why people go, fuck this. Why the fuck would anyone in their right mind try to have a music career? It's nuts. And if you don't absolutely love it, if you're not driven to it, it's you're better off doing something else. You're better off, be a doctor or a lawyer or anything, uh, and play music for fun because you love it.
But in a way, you had your work cut out for you from the very beginning, because the genre of music that you're playing, I don't think there are any bands that would be in the kind of death metal category that you could say, "Oh, those guys are fucking raking it in." Like it's certainly not a very. I mean, in the US, you don't have any radio play, and I know that in the US, radio continues to be extremely important, right? For music. So you was it ever for you a possibility to play? I'm not saying to be like a touring guitarist for like Taylor Swift or something, but just to play more accessible music for people.
Well, I love metal. So that love for metal, like, outweighed for me the balance of, oh, I could go make a much better living playing some other kind of music, but I love metal. So, when you make that choice, you kind of have to make it with your eyes open, like, okay, I know this is never going to be a great living, but what do I want to do with my life and the time I have here on planet Earth? I want to make some metal. That's more important to me.
It is just the issue of having a calling to do something. Just yesterday, I was watching. I mean, just like you like to insert into every conversation we have that you do martial arts. I
Oh,
will now.
now I remember you. Yeah,
Yes,
you're the guy you said that in the last
of course I
interview,
did.
and,
It's
and I
true,
remember
everyone.
laughing about it.
I am just, yeah.
So wait, so for every interview that we're gonna do the rest of our careers, are you gonna insert that one in there?
No, I was gonna mention that I'm a scuba diver, and I'm just gonna start doing that. And just yesterday, I was watching a documentary about free diving, which are these people who go through huge depths without oxygen, right? So they just take a very deep
Yeah.
breath. And there was this Italian girl who held the female free diving record for many, many years. Reminds me a bit of what you're saying now, because it is this issue of this is what I want to do. I have a calling to do this. I know that it is probably a bad idea. I know that the life that comes with it is not fantastic, because this is not like Formula One or soccer or football. It is not a very profitable sport to be in, but it's like that is just what I want to do. And now
Hmm.
what you're saying, I love metal, and to me, it is more important to create metal. I kind of sense the same feeling behind that, which is it wasn't really a choice to do something else.
It's a calling. One is driven to it. You have to do it.
How was it for you to mix fatherhood, which on the other hand, um, performing this type of music?
Well, uh, I can tell you that parenting is very hard when you're on the other side of the planet. Every father, wants to be there for their child if you possibly can, right? I mean, kids need their dads. So, being aware of that, but also being away, it's heart wrenching. Right? It's uh, got its own level of regret. Like, I'm out here and I'm playing music, I'm doing the thing that I want to do, but my kid also needs me at home. So that's tough, man. That's fucking tough, because you got to wrestle with your own conscience and try to, be a responsible parent. Man, these are not necessarily easy things to do. Like you were talking about the people who do free diving and they put themselves in an environment that's not really good for human survival. Well, this would be like parenting and playing death metal.
And the at the beginning, when I asked you about this, canceling shows, etc., we didn't cover the second part, which was how are you doing and what happened to you exactly. If you want to, of course, talk about it.
Well, I don't necessarily want to bore people with, oh, you got this and you got that. Uh, I'm doing better now. But it was about a month of recovery this time. I feel very cheated out of my summer. Like I was going to enjoy this summer, right? Because the album's finished, and July I was going to be home, and but it was not to be.
You know, you mentioned the album being finished, and indeed you're about to release the Underworld Awaits Us All, your first studio album since Vile Necrotic Rites from 2019. Of course, you haven't been sitting on your laurels, as you remember from our last martial arts related conversation. We spoke when when you released the Saurian Exorcisms. But before we get into the topic of the album itself, the topic and your lyrical creations being what I consider to be one of the most interesting things in death metal. I'm interested, I'm sorry, in the origin story of the album a little bit, because you had some lineup changes and you even had some auditions to replace Brad Paris. At least in theory, that was announced, right? So how was this audition process, and more importantly, what do you look for in a musician when you're going to work with them? Because it is not just about the technical prowess of being able to play the music. That cannot be enough.
Well, the first of all, someone's got to be able to play the songs. Like if the person can't actually play the songs, it goes nowhere. I say this in making humor out of the obvious because one would think that if one were applying for the job, that would be the obvious prerequisite. You have to be able to play the songs. So it would blow your mind how many people think they can play these songs but are lost. But that doesn't stop them from auditioning. We had 220 something people audition when we did that open call after Brad left.
When you say audition, we're not talking in person, right? So they probably sent you
It
recordings,
was a
or
video audition where you learn the song and then you videotape yourself playing that song, and that's your audition. So we gave everybody the same song and gave them everything they needed, gave them tabs, gave them the recordings, gave them the drum stems and the guitar stems to work with it, and you know made it as easy as possible for people. And I can tell you that waiting through 200 something auditions of people murdering the songs but thinking they're doing great is a very painful and tiresome process. It made us want to kill ourselves. So the first guy that we narrowed it down to like just a handful of guys. And the first guy that we gave a chance, we worked with for 3 months, and he totally dropped the ball. And he had to have his mommy text me to say, well, he won't be able to be blah, blah, blah. So then we got, all right, the next guy on the list.
I'm sorry. So you were working for 3 months with somebody. You felt that he wasn't up to the level. You told them to go, and then his mom texted you?
No. We were working hard and we were helping him. And one day I said, well, that sounds okay. Let's hit the record button and let's see how we're actually doing. So we recorded him playing some of the songs, and I said, okay, let's listen back to it. And I said, well, how do you feel about it? When he listened back to himself playing the songs, and he fell apart. He crumbled just like that. He went home all sad, and then had his mommy text us saying we're going to have to find somebody else because he won't be able to do it. So then we got another guy.
But was he very young?
He was a young guy. He was like 20, 21, but he was great, fabulous. Could play like a monster, had a good voice. Would have been great.
That's precisely what I was saying as to, obviously there is this pre-requirement of the technical ability, but then there is just being able to handle the pressure. Because if you're gonna crumble in front of 5 people who want you to succeed, playing in front of 1,000 people is going to really suck.
Yes. Like, I think that this shines a flashlight on the new guys in a very positive way, in that when they had to play at Hellfest without me, that was only their second show. In Hellfest, you were talking about 20, 30,000 people. Like, I'd been helping them at rehearsal, right? We all worked together at rehearsal, to be ready together. But all of a sudden, they had to do it. Not just, second show, but second show without any help. Dude, can you imagine the pressure on those guys? But they did it. So that says very, strong positive things about what are these guys made of. These guys are made of fucking metal. Right? They got tested in a way that nobody else in Nile or anybody applying for the job could possibly be tested, right? Because it's one thing to be doing okay when it's just us in rehearsal. It's another thing to walk out in front of thousands of people who may or may not give a fuck.
And so after this first kid, kind of dropped out. The person right after was the one that you ended up working with.
Well, we gave the next guy 2 months. We worked with him, brought him up here, rehearsed like, boot camp. Then his wife told him she didn't want him going on tour.
That seemed like a conversation that should have been had at the beginning of that process.
Yeah. So then we got a third guy. And we took him out on a few tours, but that didn't work out either. So at that time, I was pretty much over it. I was fed up. There was 3 guys, and all 3 of them had failed. And this was the best out of 220 people that auditioned. So I was pretty fed up. So when I got a call from Gunter Ford, who manages both Nile and Morbid Angel, he said, "Hey, Dan wants to do this thing. He plays bass. He's been playing bass with Incantation. He'd love this gig." So I was like, okay, all right, we'll give it a chance. And Dan showed up, prepared, knew his stuff, could do the job. It was easy. I was like, thank God, because I'm fucking fed up. I'm fed up with training bass players and watching them fail. So I'm very thankful we got a guy who could really do the job.
Do you think that you are intimidating as a boss in the band? Because after all, I mean, I'm not trying to say that you're necessarily commanding everyone else, but it is a ship that you are steering in a way, right? So do you think that particularly for the kid who's like 21 or something like that, you might be a little bit like a lot?
Well, I try to be gentle with people as much as possible. You want to encourage people to succeed, and you try to make it so that they can succeed. But at some point, it's still up to them to do what needs to be done. So, am I intimidating? Well, I try to help people. If that's intimidating, I'm sorry.
Because you also need to understand that you are seen as a very talented kind of a symbol of extremely technical death metal. So I can imagine that it's not exactly somebody you want to fuck up in front of, you know.
I mean, I get that because, like, I still take guitar lessons, right? So when I take guitar lessons, you know, with Rusty Cooley, playing in front of Rusty Cooley is like, wow. Like, I'm playing guitar all my life, but this guy's a friggin' monster. There we go. That's why I take lessons from him. Right? So I don't like fucking up in front of Rusty. Like, if he shows me something, you know, yeah, I get it. There's a certain thing, but, you know, I try to help people. I try to encourage them to do well and give them everything that they need to succeed. And some people succeed and some people don't. All I can do is try to help them.
What was the biggest challenge for you at the beginning? You know, connecting it with this, you know, with this kid, or you know, this other one whose wife obviously says, you know, it's I don't want you to tour, which is, you know, as you were saying before, it's all in all understandable because it is a huge sacrifice, you know, for a person with a family. When you were starting, what was the big challenge for you as you started to move towards being a professional musician?
Finding the right people, I think, is always the biggest challenge. Because there's people that can play, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have the same goals or aspirations, or, you know, it's tough to find the right combination of people. You also have to be able to get along with them in a band and find ways to work together. So that's a challenge. Um, I think the next big challenge on the scale of challenges are getting someone to give a fuck about whatever it is that you're doing. Because there's a million bands. There's bands, there's so many bands and so much music that why should anyone care about this new band or that new band? Why should we care? Right? I remember, you know, when Nile was first starting, facing that giant wall of indifference, and we weren't doing what everybody else was doing. Back then, everyone was either a Cannibal Corpse clone or a Suffocation copy. And that's like what all young bands were trying to do, or trying to be Pantera, or Alice in Chains, or Metallica, right? This what everybody copied the same fucking bands. And we didn't necessarily want to do that. We wanted to do our own thing, whatever that was. So there's another challenge right there.
The whatever it is that you wanted to do ended up being, you know, highly technical death metal with the Sumerian, Egyptian, kind of Near East mythology as the lyrical background. That interest in Egyptology and Near Eastern studies, was that something that you from the very beginning wanted to do with your music?
At first, it was like a casual interest. But like that, there was an epiphany moment very early on after we decided to call ourselves Nile, where I said, well, okay, if I were a listener, what would I expect to hear from a band called Nile? What should we be doing? What could we do? Right? And that whole question just sparked, like, okay, if we're called Nile, what should we be doing? So as I started writing songs and became like, you know, studying up, so that I would like be able to write some songs, the more I researched it, the more I found, well, this is a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this. This is okay. I like this. Let's do more.
Your coverage of mythology and Sumerian stuff is not as superficial. I mean, you actually do go a little bit deeper into the myths, into the stories, which for me at least has been a very interesting thing. Even though you're not spoon feeding the thing so the lyrics are often a bit confusing if you don't have a level of understanding that I certainly do not have, right? So I did never nerded out that much on Sumerian or Egyptian mythology, but it is fascinating to learn about. On that note, what are the topics that you are reviewing this time with The Underworld Awaits Us All? See, we're coming full circle, man. This is
Very
all
nice.
planned from the very
Nicely
beginning.
done. The Underworld Awaits Us All. The title track, we're talking about the inevitability of death for everybody. And we don't exactly know exactly what happens when we die. Where do we go? Because no one has come back to tell us what happens. We don't actually fucking know. But wherever it is that we as metal fans, Nile listeners, wherever that place is that we are going to go, we will be there together. The underworld awaits us all of us.
Most of the songs in the album actually have pretty short titles, which was a surprise. But you did have the chapter for not being hung upside down on a stake in the underworld and made to eat feces by the four apes.
Yes.
I do have
you did
to
that
ask.
really well.
Thank you so much. Can you explain that to me a little bit? Because I read the lyrics, I have them here. Napalm was kind enough to send them, but it doesn't really mean anything to me. I assume that it's connected to a specific mythological story. So if you could give me a little bit of background on that.
Well, a lot of it comes from chapter 181 of the Book of the Dead, the chapter for not being hung upside down and made to eat feces. And as cool as that title was, and when I saw the title, I went, whoa, how is this not a metal song? The other elements of that song that come into play are from the version of the Egyptian underworld as discussed by E.A. Wallace Budge, where the four apes, the servants of Babylon, are a bunch of monkeys, like in particular they're baboons. Baboons are vicious little creatures. They are the tormentors of the underworld. They're the ones who ripped the deceased to shreds, eat their insides, stick their penises in them and violate them, make them eat feces.
So then this would be like
That's
a chapter
their job.
In the Book of the Dead that is a little bit like Dante Alighieri's showing of what happens in hell. Am I getting that correctly?
Yes. This particular chapter, it's a spell to protect yourself from these apes and to not be hung upside down on a stake or made to eat feces, right? It's a spell trying to avoid this fate. So if you know the spell, well, this won't happen to you. But if you don't know the spell, boy, are you in trouble.
Yeah, right. If you don't like being hung upside down, imagine how it feels like if there are four monkeys also making you eat feces. That never feels good. In the press material for the album, you mentioned, and in all honesty, I think every band says, well, in this album, we really decided to go all the way, and to really go back to our roots and to double, like every band says that. But I do believe that you take your music quite seriously. I think that you're a very serious musician. And you mentioned that you were trying to up your game. At least that is the quote attributed to you in the press material. What do you mean by that? Assuming that it's an accurate quote.
Well, this is stems from a conversation George and I had, and Brian came in too. We got to up our game. Every aspect of the the album, the songs, songwriting, the playing, the viciousness, the brutality, the commitment. We need to push harder. We need to go further than we've gone before. We're not a group of guys who are content to rest on our laurels. We want to push ourselves. And I am of the belief that is self-evident on this record. When you put this record on, if it doesn't slap you in the face, like, oh shit, a ton of work went into this fucking record, then it's time to clean the wax out of the ears, because this record is chock full of hard work.
Obviously, you continue to make good music, but as I mentioned before, you are a very technical musician. When it comes to the technical aspect of it, do you ever feel that you might be reaching a ceiling? I'm not trying to say it in a derogatory way, so please don't get me wrong. But do you feel that there is a like that? What if I am reaching the end of my skills as to how technical, how fast I can get?
It's a valid question, right? Is there a ceiling? I don't think the ceiling is necessarily related to the numerical number of beats per minute that the song is in. Because some of the songs on this record that sound fast as fuck are not actually, if we went strictly by the number, are not necessarily the fastest we've ever played. But what the focus was on this record was to take what it is that we're doing and make it translate to the listener effectively. Like a song like Nakata 2, Into the Golden Age. It's a fast song. It's a burner, right? It's a metal as fuck song. It's actually only medium fast, right? It's not super fast numerically, but it feels fast. It has impact. It does the right stuff to convey to the listener we're going forward. We got forward motion and acceleration. There you go. That's not necessarily right. Going fast and making it translate to the listener is a harder job than just going fast, because there's bands that play fast and go absolutely nowhere, right? It's possible to do that. We've done that. Been there, done that, right? But what's important, I think, is if you're playing music and people are going to listen to it, that the idea that you're trying to get across to them, you actually get across to them. It's like communication. Like if I say something, but the words I use don't actually convey what I'm trying to say, then that's a communication fail. Same thing with music, it seems to me, happens a lot. There's a lot of super fast technical bands, but does that necessarily equate to, does the listener get something from it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And if no, why not? Where are the places that we go wrong when you're being super technical? Sometimes it's not even about the technical part. Like, if you really listen to this record, it's not about the technique. It's about what it is that we're bringing. What's the content of the song? How does it affect people? Does it make you want to bang your head?
It did. When I was listening to it today, it absolutely did make me want to bang my head. So at least in that sense, you've certainly succeeded.
Awesome.
Karl, thank you so much for the time that you're giving me today. As you can see, I always enjoy talking with you. I am genuinely surprised you didn't mention the martial arts this time,
Well, you did it for me,
but I
so
did
I
it for
think
you, correct? So I
that
just
that can be the thing from now on, right? Each time we talk, you can put it in there.
okay, Sensei. Uh, Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great day, man.
You too, man. It's always fun talking with you.